What was the best and the worst movie of 2024? Well, I saw 41 movies in theater this year, and I thought I would just make a tier list to see, which ones are actually good movies, which ones are horrible, which ones were kind of worth my time in theaters, because I saw a lot of movies that I wish I had that time back because it was just not a great movie. A lot of bad movies came out this year. A lot of okay movies came out this year. There wasn't as many great movies as there were in 2023. But I just wanted to create this tier list of everything I personally saw in theaters this year and kind of rate it and give my thoughts on why I was rating it as highly or as low as it was. So starting off, this movie 1992. Now, this was a gritty movie about a dad protecting his son. His son gets into some trouble on a big political night where there is protests and stuff going on, and he has to get his son out of trouble. I actually booked to see this twice in theaters and missed both. Wound up seeing it on a plane when I was traveling, but since I got the ticket, I have on this list. Now, this movie was probably, I would just watch if there was no other options. Again, I was on the plane and I watched it because there's no other options. It wasn't quite a good movie. It wasn't bad. The acting was good. It was entertaining, but it's the same trope you see in every action movie. American Fiction, I'm just going to go ahead and put this right here. You probably don't remember this one. This was a very artistic movie that came out in January of this year. I think I saw it like January 5th or January 6th. So almost a full year ago now. It was about a black man who's an author and none of his books are very successful. So he writes a very stereotypical black fiction book where it is doing a lot of things that are almost like stereotypes. It's nothing he believes in, but he figures out like he can make money with it. And it had a lot of twists. It had more to it. The plot was there. It was a good movie. It's something that I would recommend people to see. Now, was it worth seeing in theaters? No. I'm surprised it even came out in theaters and didn't just go straight to streaming services. Argylle was a movie worth seeing in theaters. Now, this was what's the word? This was a Kingsman spin-off movie, which you don't really understand until the back half of the film. But it was just about this woman who's an author and everything she writes about starts becoming true. And then you find out that she actually lived a different life and lost her memory. And that's why all of her stuff is so right on the money. And it was fun. It was a fun movie. It wasn't incredible. It wasn't something that I'd say even had a contender for one of the best movies of 2024 because it was worth seeing, but it wasn't something I went and bragged about. Afterwards, I was like, it was good. I had fun seeing it in theaters. Arthur the King, I'll put it behind American Fiction. This will probably be towards the end of good movie or maybe the start of watch only if there's no other options. I am a big fan of inspirational movies, and that's what this is. This is about a race that goes over 200 miles, I want to say. And this man and his team discover a dog along the way that somehow is following them over hundreds of miles, stuff that should not be possible. But it was also about Mark Wahlberg's character and how he's trying to, this is his last shot at this title he's been working on for so long. And it was good. I enjoyed it. I might actually move it down here though, just because it's not something that's going to be a mainstream movie, but I did enjoy it. I would say, like I said, if there's no other options and you saw us come on, turn it on and you'll enjoy it and at the end you'll say it's a good movie, but it might not be something you feel like bragging about. Bad Boys 4 or 5, I don't know which one we're on now. I enjoyed seeing this in theaters. I'd say the main thing that made me put this here was not Will Smith. The main thing that's put me here is there's a scene where what's his face? His partner, his name is slipping me, the actor's name is slipping me. Martin Lawrence, maybe. His son-in-law takes out a whole house full of bad guys, and that's what made it worth. That one scene makes it worth seeing in theaters. I don't know about the rest of it, but that one scene, it was fun. It was enjoyable. I liked it. Um, yeah. Beetlejuice. Gosh, I'm kind of split on this one just because it was a good movie, but it's not the kind of movie I typically like. Um, and the villain in the movie that they hyped up for so long, they killed with ease. Um, just because of that, I'm actually going to put it down here because I like a good villain. I like the villain to be like hard to beat, and this villain is going around sucking the soul out of everyone, making everyone just die like permadead, and then they kill her in 30 seconds. So because of that, I'm not going to rate it very high. Blink Twice. Now this I'm very conflicted about. I'm going to say it's a good movie here. I'm not putting it worth seeing in theaters because it did not, and the trailer did a good job. I'm not faulting that. But you did not know what this movie was about going into it, and there was no warning on what it was about. And there's a very vivid 3 to 4 minute scene about some very intense adult things that are awful that happen, unfortunately. And they showed a lot of it, and there was no warning. There was no trigger warning. I know it's a movie and I shouldn't be soft, but it like really freaked me out. I was not expecting it. The movie overall was good though. It's just I would not like when I saw it in theaters, I was annoyed. I was annoyed leaving the theater because of that one scene. I think the movie was done well and I enjoyed the concept. The concept is they're on this island partying, but they're forgetting things. They're missing parts of their memory because there is a flower that when you inhale it, it makes you forget. Now there's also vipers on the island, and if they bite you, their venom makes you remember everything that happened. So they're trying to figure out what's going on, and the main character finally figures out, oh, like if I drink this venom, I can remember. So she starts letting the other women remember on the island to remember what the boys, like the men, are doing to them at night. And the concept was cool, but I think I would have rated this a little bit higher if there had been some kind of trigger warning. One Love. Now, this might surprise people. I enjoyed seeing this in theaters. It's going to be towards the back end of this row, but I didn't know a ton about Bob Marley, and I'd watched other biopics in the past, and this one was better than all the biopics I've seen. I know that they consulted with his sons and his kids and his family to make sure this was done well, but this portrayed him well, and the music in it and telling his whole story was just done incredibly. And for a biopic, I was entertained the entire time I was in the theater. It wasn't one of the best movies, and it was just like I said, it's between good movie and a movie worth seeing in theaters. Challengers. Okay, this one was very hyped up. It was not a movie for me. This is definitely I don't know how to say this well, but this is definitely a movie for women and big fans of Zendaya, and she killed it. She did an incredible job. Her performance as well. You know, I'll put this up here. It was cool to see it in theaters, and after someone explained it to me, I understood it a lot more. I did not understand at first that it was a love triangle, but not your traditional love triangle. One of the guys loved the game of tennis. No, she loved the game of tennis. One of the guys loved her, and one of the guys loved the other guy. And so it was a very weird, like, love triangle that wasn't quite connected. And it wasn't really about tennis. So going into it, you think it's about tennis. It's not about tennis. But it was also kind of a coming to maturity story at the start with the two guys and what they were talking about. And it was making me think a little bit back to growing up myself and some of those hard conversations you have when you're a boy, like going through puberty and figuring out women and all that stuff. And it was done well. I was a little uncomfortable during some of the scenes and some of the stuff they said, but overall, I enjoyed the movie and the little twist at the end and the last scene. Really, that's probably what pushed us from good movie to a movie we're seeing in theaters for me. Deadpool Wolverine will be our first one up here. I don't know if it was the best movie. I'm going to rearrange this row, but they did Wolverine justice. They did Deadpool justice. It was the best one so far. There's not really much to say about it. It was, if you did not see this movie in theaters, I'm sure they'll put it back out again whenever there's an anniversary. It is worth seeing. All the actors did incredible. The only downside of this movie that probably won't make it number one is just the fact that the big villain was so easy for them to defeat in the end. But other than that, like it was good. We're gonna go down to the opposite side now. Despicable Me 4. They need to stop. It is so bad. I don't understand. The girls never get older. He has a son now. I feel like they're running out of dialogue for it because half the movie is just minion sounds and it is miserable. It is miserable to sit through. It is like every single part of it is misery for me. I do not like these Despicable Me movies, the Minion movies. The first one was done so well, and Illumination has just beat that horse into the ground and tried to drain of every dollar it's worth. And it is rough to sit through. I'm sure at this point they're also repeating animation to save money, and it's just overall pretty horrible. Yeah. Back up here, Dune 2. I liked Dune 2. I enjoyed it. I think it had more action and less plot building than the first one. I'm not familiar with the Dune books. I have not read all of them, so I don't know how it's going to turn out. So because of that, when I go and I see these movies, I am entertained. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a long time ago, and I think I should rewatch it. But I really like Timothy and Zendaya. Both of them just did incredible with their roles, and I'm excited to see where this trilogy, if it's going to be a trilogy, or where this series goes. Fly Me to the Moon, I'm going to put the top of down here. Watch only if there's no other options. I enjoyed this movie, though. I enjoyed the twist. I think Scarlett Johansson did a great job. I liked the movie. It was a good movie, but again, it's not something that I would go and rewatch. It's not something that I would recommend people to watch unless they had an AMC pass or a different movie pass. It's just a movie that if you were in a hotel room or you're just sitting there at home and you had nothing to watch, you're like, I'll watch a good movie. You could watch this and you would be entertained, but you wouldn't be screaming its praises from the mountaintops. Furiosa. I loved Furiosa. That was by far one of the best movies of 2024. I liked how they split it up between little chapters. I loved her progression and the growth of her character. I loved the violence in it. It wasn't too gory. It was the best Mad Max movie to come out to date. And it was great. It was phenomenal. There was nothing wrong with this movie at all. I remember sitting there like trying to think of a review for this and saying, wow, this was either a 9 or a 10 out of 10. But I was like, it's a 10 out of 10. I could not think of a better way they could have done it. And yeah, I don't know if they're going to continue this. I hope that they leave it as a masterpiece and don't make another one to ruin it, but it was good. Ghostbusters, I like what they're doing with this. Was it worth seeing in theaters? No, I would have rather watched it at home, but I enjoyed Ghostbusters. I think that the direction they're taking these and how they're building on each other and building the characters up, they're doing it well. It is phenomenal. The CGI and all of that has now reached a point where they can actually do these movies justice. Gladiator 2 was not one of the best movies of the year, and it should have been. But I think with everything else that came out, it was just at the top of a movie worth seeing in theaters. I enjoyed Gladiator 2. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But I don't think that it was as good as the first Gladiator. And because of that, it's not one of the best movies of 2024. If a movie came out 20 years prior and that was your first movie and it was better than yours, yeah, there was a lot of plot building, not a lot of action, a lot of, I don't know, just scenes that I felt maybe they could have spiced it up, made it a little bit more exciting. Godzilla vs. Kong. This was a good movie, but you know what you're getting into. I'd say it's something I would go out of my way to watch, so that's why I'm going to put it here and not down here. But it wasn't, it's just a bunch of titans punching each other, you know? Like, you know exactly what you're getting into. You know that Godzilla and Kong, neither of them are going to die, so you know they're going to, like, do well. It was a good movie. I'll put If up here. I'll put, I struggle with this one. So I liked the twist, but because I'm an adult, I saw the twist coming from the first 5 minutes of the film. So essentially this girl is trying to find these imaginary friends' homes, and she is being helped, and then she finds out that the guy helping her was her imaginary friend growing up. That's the twist. If you haven't seen it, sorry I ruined it. But it was still enjoyable. Even with me telling that to you, you would enjoy the movie because you would have figured that out within the first 5 minutes. And it dived into her childhood, and I think one of her parents passed away. But yeah, Inside Out 2. All right, I'm actually gonna do something real crazy. No, I'm not. Just because there's another one instead. I'd say this was higher for me than Gladiator. I am a big Inside Out 1 hater. I did not like Sadness. I want Sadness to fall in that forever forgetful pit. Get rid of her. And that is why I am placing this so high. Because I saw this and I left being like, wow, they have not portrayed anxiety very well in animated movies my entire life. Puss in Boots 2 was the first good example of it. Inside Out 2 did a better job. And just this young, preteen girl figuring out her emotions and how they shape her, I think it was much more relatable than the little 4 or 5-year-old Riley processing her emotions. So they did a great job with this. I wish that Pixar could do one for adults, someone as an adult, 19, 20, 21, and do that. But because it's a kid production animation studio, they obviously can't. But this was worth seeing in theaters. I thoroughly enjoyed this even as an adult. I can't imagine being a kid. I think I would have loved it. It Ends with Us. Horrible. This movie was horrible. This was portrayed as a girly flick. This is going to be the new Barbie. Go see this with your girls. It was about horrible topics. They did not warn you about it. The actors were meh. It was a very dull and lackluster story. It was a disappointment. And the trailer was a disappointment. This entire movie was horrible. I considered walking out several times throughout this movie, and I don't know why I didn't. I just sat there and suffered in silence. Joker 2. Now, when I made my short about this, I said this was a good movie. After thinking about it and pondering on it, it was a disgrace to the Batman franchise. It was a twist on Joker, an iconic character that did not need a twist made on him. The music was good, but you had Lady Gaga in it. It was going to have good music. She's matured as an artist versus this wasn't the movie. This reminds me of when they came out the live action Mulan and it had nothing to do with Mulan, and it was not Mulan. That is what this felt like. This was, like I said, just an absolute disgrace to an iconic character that people enjoy. And because of that, it was a really bad movie, maybe even a horrible movie. Kung Fu Panda 4, also really bad. The first three Kung Fu Pandas, there is several, and I know this because I've watched them. There's several compilations on YouTube of inspirational twists as Po discovers his character and who he is, and each Kung Fu Panda builds on that. Whereas first one, he has a line where he literally says, like, oh, I didn't give up, when Shifu's asking him, I didn't give up because yes, I was bad, and yes, you were telling me I was like awful, but it was still better than who I was before. And the second one, he finds inner peace, even though he finds out his parents died. And the third one, he literally is asked, who are you? And he's able to say he's more than just the Dragon Warrior. He's all of these things. The fourth one was awful. There was no point to it. The plot was dull. They did not include any of the Furious Five, the main supporting side characters, if that's the word for an animated film. It was awful. It was a really bad movie. It was better than Despicable Me because you didn't have to listen to minion sounds. And it was better than Joker because they didn't disgrace his character, but it was still awful. Wow, Madam Web. I walked out on this. So this was by far the worst movie of the year. It sucks because I booked this 3 times and I'm just like annoyed that I bumped the rating by 3. They thought 3 people wanted to go see this because this movie, I walked out, I sat there for 40 minutes thinking surely it's going to get better, and it never got better. Like, it just never got better. It was so awful. So awful. And hopefully they're done with these Spider-Man villains. I did not hear good things about Kraven, which is why you're not going to see it on here. Okay, Moana 2. Was this worth seeing in theaters? I would have rather seen this at home, but it was up there. It was a good movie. It just was not incredible. I think I would have given this like a 7 out of 10. These movies up here that are worth seeing in theaters, they either had great scenes or they had a good twist, you know? And Moana 2 was not as good as the first one. By far, it was worse than the first one. They introduced far too many characters, so Moana 1 just focuses on Moana with a little bit of like a dash of Maui. Moana 2, they had like 5 different people on the ship and they're exploring them, and it was not fantastic. Leave it there. Mufasa, I think this was worth seeing in theaters. I think I would put it probably right there. It did not have the emotional twist that Inside Out 2 had, so that's why I didn't beat it. It was not one of the best movies of the year. I'm not going to give it that. But it was enjoyable. The story was better. The songs were worse for The Lion King. So the story was much more enjoyable for me than The Lion King because it was new, it was fresh, it was exciting, and it was great. Yeah, it was great. Quiet Place Part 2. Not gonna lie, I did not see the first Quiet Place. I thought it was a horror movie, so I didn't see it. This movie was up here. It was not worth seeing in theaters. It was not better than that, so we'll put it there. It was slow. It was a slow build. It had a like nice twist to it. The main character, the woman, is dying already, and they're trying to get off the island of New York City. Or I guess New York's kind of an island from where it's positioned. I want to say they were on Manhattan. So they're trying to get off Manhattan. And it was enjoyable, but it was very slow and I fell asleep at one point. I'd watch it. I'd say it was a good movie worth talking about. So that's why I'm not putting it down here. I will put Red One down here. Red One was the worst movie on this list. It was fun for a Christmas movie, but it wasn't anything baffling. It wasn't anything new. It just kind of happened. And you could see the actors had a good time with it, but too much CGI, it was just okay. Sonic 3, I am debating putting up here. I might move it in a second. This was the best Sonic movie by far. And for kids' movies, it did a great job. I loved seeing Sonic and Shadow fight. I loved Jim Carrey. I liked his performance. There was not much wrong with this movie. The end credit scene made you excited for the next film. It was fun. I enjoyed it. The Beekeeper, I would say it's at the top of this. It was a kind of like a John Wick knockoff, but he was a beekeeper. He had honey. He put in a bunch of bee jokes. It was fun to watch, and it was like an okay movie. But Jason Statham, like he does the same movies over and over, so it wasn't anything new. The Bike Riders, I enjoyed the Bike Riders, but I don't think other people would. I'm gonna put it down here at the. It's definitely above Red One, but it's a slow build. It's more of a documentary type. It was not a bad movie by any means. It was good, but it was not phenomenal. Most of these you can see it's very skewed in the middle because not a lot of stuff was really bad and not a lot of stuff was like the best of the year. The Boy and the Heron. I don't think this was really bad. But for Studio Ghibli, I will actually put it down here. And I might get hate for this, but it was between these two. If you don't really like Studio Ghibli, you're not going to watch this. You would think it was bad. The animation's different. The story, though, was not as good as the other Studio Ghibli movies. That's why it's down here. It was okay. Again, I saw this at the start of the year. Maybe if I rewatched it, my opinion would be different. But I think this is a pretty good representation of where that movie stands, in my opinion, if I put it down here. Fall Guy was worth seeing in theaters. I enjoyed this more than Gladiator. It was very stunt heavy. There was not a lot of CGI, so that's why I'm putting it here. It wasn't as emotional as Inside Out, and it didn't have the nostalgia that Mufasa had, but I enjoyed them giving stunt crews what they deserve and actually showing, I don't know, like showing all the stunts. And then in the after credits, they show you how they did a lot of it. And it was just a very good homage and like a very good, like hats off to like stunt crews and stuff. A Killer's Game, it's behind Red One. No, I'm putting it down here. It it wasn't horrible, but I left feeling very disappointed when I left the theater. I was not shouting it from the rooftops. It was. I know he wants to have a higher range. The guy from Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know his name. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't. It wasn't great. Yeah, it wasn't great. This movie, A Ministry of Ungainly Warfare. I'm gonna put this here. I did I enjoy this movie? Yes. Did the trailers make it seem better than it was? Yes. With the cast it had, it should have done a lot better than it did. So because of that, I'm not rating it very high. It just kind of happened. A Wild Robot. This is up here for sure. I I loved this movie. I really loved this movie. I love the story. I just think it did so well for a kids movie and just this robot finding herself. I might move it. I might move this in a second, but I personally feel like it may have been one of the best movies of the year, but looking at this other lineup, I don't know. I'm going to have to put it here. But again, if you have not seen this movie, please go see it because this movie, just the story and everything about it, it was an original concept that surprised me. Transformers 1 was bad. It was not as bad as Kung Fu Panda, but it was not great. I know I was not the demographic made for this, but again, not great. Trap, was bad. It was horrible. It was boring. M. Night Shyamalan needs to retire. He should be banned from making movies at this point. I don't know why this is even a thing. The acting was horrible. All of it was horrible. I'm even going to say, with all the horrible themes, it was still a worse movie than It Ends With Us. It was bad. It was awful. Twisters. I saw this movie multiple times this year. I actually saw this when I was flying to Australia on the plane. I rewatched it because it was that good of a movie. I would rewatch this before I would rewatch any of the rest of these movies that I just put it above. It was a movie that I enjoyed seeing in theaters. I liked the feel of it. The actors did a good job. I felt the stress of the actors. I enjoyed this movie thoroughly. Venom, I was heavily disappointed by. I'd put it at the end of being a good movie because I don't think this was worth seeing in theaters. I honestly don't. I think the first Venom was new and fresh and it had that charm to it. But I don't know. I don't personally think that this movie was all that. I don't think they did a good send-off for Venom. And I know it's supposed to be the last one, and maybe it won't be because the end credits show that he could come back. But I didn't really enjoy this movie as much as I should have. Live in Time was depressing. It wasn't bad, but for romance it was. So we're going to put it here. With the cast this had, it should have been a better movie. And the build was so slow, and the romance section of it was so bad. Like, it did not feel like a romance movie. It felt like they were just fighting and arguing the whole time, and I'm not really sure what point they were trying to get at. But then they went on all these talk shows and tried to promote their movie, and it wasn't all that. Wicked. No, that's not where I'm putting that. Wicked's up here, but I would have rated this higher. And I think Sonic 3 did better. I think Deadpool did better. Dune 2 was better. Furiosa was better. I think that, yeah, I think this is pretty solid. These movies were trash. These movies were also trash. Yeah, I don't think Wicked was better than these movies. I liked the music. I liked what they did. I think it was a phenomenal movie and one of the best of the year, but I don't think it was better than these four. Yeah, this is my tier list for the year. I only saw 41 movies, but this is all of them that are in here. I don't know if you guys will agree with this list or not, but I think this is good representation. I'm hoping next year the movies will be better than this year, but looking at the first 3 months of films that are coming out, I don't see anything I'm really excited for. So we'll see what 2025 brings, but 2024, I think it's a good sign that there is more movies in these top 3 categories than there is in these last 3 for the big blockbusters of the year. Let me know if you guys agree with this list. If you somehow made it all the way to the end, please let me know because this is a very long video. But yeah, thanks. Bye.